Now, speaking about leadership development, you've devoted, your career, your life to leadership development. There was an HBR article that had found that, on average, managers get their first leadership training only 10 years after they actually began supervising people. So it's a long time that they wait. And we see the same thing because a lot of my work is in healthcare. So we see clinicians, doctors, promoted into leadership roles without formal training. So what would you say, Eddie, needs to change in order for us to create better leaders?
You have to start teaching early. Yes, that article in HBR is also some of the research that Barry Posner and Jim Kouzes reveal in their book, The Leadership Challenge, that we're waiting 10 years to train people about leadership. And that is just simply too late, because now they've been literally practicing leadership in the truest sense of the word, and all this carnage is left behind.
Right.
While they were practicing, they were hurting people.
Yeah.
And if this was in the legal profession, if this was in the medical profession, as you're practicing in, we would call that malpractice, right?
Yes. Why do you think organizations are, I don't know if it's they're unwilling to, or maybe they're unaware of, even programs or leadership development opportunities that might help their leaders? What do you think the issue might be, Eddie?
I think it's a combination of things. Number one, there's a inverted pyramid. A lot of the money is being spent at the top of the organization for the executives to get trained. And as you go lower to the organization, less money is being spent. Because sometimes individuals have the notion that it's not as important to train at the lower levels. But really, if you flip that pyramid, you'd actually build up your leadership pipeline and you build it up sooner. And the idea that, yes, we definitely want to invest in what HR people call the hypos, those who have high potential, but you'd have more people with high potential if they were trained properly.
Right.
Sometimes we help people to discover their gifts. For example, when I wanted to come into this field, once I realized this is what I wanted to do, it was because someone else saw this in me and said, you can do this. Other people were looking at me when I was applying for higher roles in IT and saying, well, we don't think you're quite management material yet. Right? What was it based on? Their opinion, or based on this idea that people go through a certain set of steps before they're ready? But that's not always what's needed. So sometimes it's people's own biases. Sometimes it's a hierarchy that may not really be based on true competencies. In fact, I've been in organizations, the last organization I worked for didn't even have competencies at all. So part of the reason I was brought in is I helped myself and those who were recruited to help establish competencies. We need to give people something to measure so that they know what it takes. And then the other component would be just really valuing the importance of education, seeing it as truly becoming a learning-centric organization. That learning is not a one and done. It's not go to college, get a degree, never go back and do anything else. That organizations must either be willing to send their people out to firms for training or bring the firms in. And that's the beautiful thing about I love doing what I do with Lakage, is that people bring us in to help develop their people, strengthen their pipelines so that they can maintain a competitive advantage internally. By the way, one last footnote on this. In a time right now where you're having a war for talent, it's even more important to be teaching your people, making them better. Because when they don't feel like you're investing in them as an organization, they're going to go to an organization that will. Because everyone wants to get better so they can do better. Fundamentally, we want to give our organizations our best. And we can only do that if we're at our best.
That's exactly, it's so true. And in nonprofit and in the healthcare world, what we often hear is the funds are not going towards direct patient care, because that's where, they're seeing the direct impact. So how do you justify funds? What do you think would help them to understand the value that leadership development coaching brings to their organizations?
Really, when individuals say that, they're only looking at one side of the coin. I look at Dr. Peter Pisters, and I may be saying his last name wrong, the CEO of MD Anderson. I had the good fortune to spend about a year there as an executive coach. And I would watch him, just one of the most fascinating leaders I've ever seen. And he truly had a servant leader mentality. And you always see the meme, treat the janitor the same way as you treat the CEO, but not everybody applies that. But this CEO really applied that. He spoke to everybody. He knew everybody's name, knew everybody's kids, knew everybody's dog. And one of the things about him is he said the janitor is just as important as he is as a CEO. And he's not just a CEO, he's a practicing physician. He is a surgeon himself. So he knows the medical side, but the business side. But he said, hey, if we don't have clean floors, we put our patients, no matter how amazing the surgeon is, we put a patient back in a dirty room, they still die. So he understood that everybody has to be educated. Everybody has to be valued and seen as playing a critical role to patient care. So when leaders say that, hey, we're not going to spend money to invest in this group of people because it's not affecting the patient directly, they're missing the point. Mm-hmm. So everybody plays a role. And if you do have people who are on the front lines, but you still have to invest in those that are in the back lines, if you will, so that those in the front can shine.